y'all. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how you can make your own greenhouse cabinet for your indoor houseplants. I'll go over some of the pros and cons of building one of these cabinets, and then I'll also go over everything you need to DIY your own. I'll also show you the greenhouse cabinet that I made using the RUDSTA from IKEA, and I'm really proud of it, so I hope you guys like it as well. So I think that the biggest pros to building one of these cabinets for your indoor houseplants are, one, that it will be so great for your humidity loving plants. An IKEA greenhouse cabinet will open the doors. You can have all the calatheas you want, all the anthuriums that you want, and they'll definitely thrive in this cabinet. A second pro for having a greenhouse cabinet would be that it will expedite the progress of your cuttings and any of your propagations like so much faster. And that really is just because it helps keep humidity high. And in an ideal cabinet, you'll have some grow lights, which I will talk about later. But just the environment that these cabinets create really speeds up the propagation process. And the third reason that I think these cabinets are so brilliant is purely aesthetic. You have a lot of freedom in choosing what color you want, what size you want, all of that kind of stuff. So you can really match it with your home interior, as opposed to the traditional greenhouse that you might find on Amazon for your indoor plants. I think aesthetically, these cabinets are a beautiful way to display your house plants while also keeping them in a greenhouse environment that's super conducive to growth. And just because I like to keep everything balanced, I will also go into some of the cons of building your own greenhouse cabinet. I think the major con for me, I'm a pretty thrifty person, and I think that these cabinets can get pretty expensive. Minimum investment for this cabinet would be $50 on the absolute thriftiest end. You're gonna need to spend some time searching for good used options on Facebook Marketplace, or asking friends for, maybe some of their old grow lights, some of their old fans, stuff like that. And then high end is like limitless. Like if you want to get like a super huge high end cabinet, the fanciest grow lights, all that, that's always an option. Average investment, I would say, is $250. That's what I would expect to spend. Another thing that could be a con, or at least something to consider, would be how much space it takes up. If you live in like a studio apartment or something, you're going to need to get a little creative with how you want to make space for this. Putting your books on top of it so that it doubles as a cabinet and a bookcase. Maybe getting one of the smaller cabinets that's like tall and skinny so you can put it in a corner. I think those are space saving options, but you do need to make sure that you have an outlet that you can really dedicate solely to the greenhouse. The last consideration I want to address would be maintenance. It's definitely not super high maintenance, at least the way that I've set mine up, but it is more maintenance than just like putting a plant on a shelf and running a humidifier next to it. So you're gonna need to check in on this cabinet daily to turn on the grow lights, turn on the fan, make sure that there isn't too much condensation. If there is, you need to wipe that down to avoid rust or mold. Those are all things that you might need to worry about that you wouldn't need to worry about just sticking your plant on the shelf. Okay, so those are my pros and cons. Now we get to talk about the fun stuff, which is how to DIY this cabinet yourself. The first thing you're going to need to obtain is a cabinet. The most popular, as I've mentioned, is the IKEA greenhouse cabinets. So that tends to include the RUDSTA, the Fabricor, the Millsbo, and I think there's another one. Detolf. Detolf is the other one. I got the RUDSTA. That one was $119 and I love it, so highly recommend that one. I can't speak for any others, but I've seen lots of great things that other people have done with them. I think that all of those designs are universally accepted as great options for this. For what these cabinets are, they are, absolutely worth the price, but you really can use any metal framed cabinet with glass doors in the front. Some keywords that I would use if you're going to search for those used on like Facebook Marketplace or even, Wayfair, Target, those are great sources. Curio cabinet is a good one. Display case is a good search term. Glass cabinet, entertainment center, entertainment console, glass console. Those are some search terms that I used when I was looking for other options, and those yielded some great results. Wouldn't recommend using wood unless you find a super good deal, and if you really want to make that work, get an outdoor weatherproof sealant like you would use on a patio, and you can just find that at Home Depot or Lowe's. The other necessity that I mentioned is a source of humidity. So the most basic form is just using the latent humidity that the plants provide. Just by having a bunch of plants grouped together, you're going to increase your humidity in there because it's enclosed in a small space. Depending on the needs of your plants, that might be perfectly fine. My plants in my cabinet are higher humidity loving plants, and so that isn't quite enough for them. Another kind of like lower end price option would be using pebble trays or just water trays. Literally just filling up a cup or like a bowl with water and pebbles and setting it, in various spots around your cabinet. That will increase the humidity in your cabinet. Something else that I've seen people do that I think is so cute, but I'm not quite crafty enough to do it, is building your own waterfall in your cabinet. That's something that y'all are gonna need to look up another YouTube video for, but it is an option and it looks super cool. What I use to keep the humidity up in my cabinet is a little mini, like 500 milliliter humidifier. The one that I have runs 10 hours and it spurts the mist out intermittently. I think every 5 seconds it sends out another little like mist spurt. That works really well for me. The humidity in my cabinet never falls below like 89%. It's almost always at like 95 to 99% humidity in there, which is what I like. So then going off of humidity, you're going to need to make sure that you have some kind of air circulation in there. If you don't have a way to circulate air, you're going to deal with mold and fungus and rust, and that's just like really gross and annoying. So I would recommend the easiest option is going to be just getting mini fans. If you're just using like a pebble tray or using the plant's latent humidity, I don't think that a fan is necessary, but if you are using like a fountain or a mini humidifier, I think a fan is 100% necessary. Okay, another thing that you need is a source of light. So if your cabinet is completely glass and like has a glass top and a glass back, then that might be easier for you. You might not need grow light. Personally, I would consider installing grow lights no matter what, just because depending on the time of year, you might want to have that extra light source in there anyways. To attach those, I used this like magnetic tape from 3M and it works amazing. I can pull the lights off and move them around whenever I need to. I think that that's a better option than screwing it in or even using zip ties to attach them. And then aesthetically, you like don't notice how it's attached at all, which I like. I will caution, make sure that you don't put in too many grow lights. And make sure you don't put grow lights on like every shelf, because odds are that's going to be way too much light in such a small place and you'll burn your plants. Some optional components that you can add to your greenhouse cabinet would be a heat source. So when you put a fan in there, it's going to bring the temp down a little bit. For heat sources, some people use like a heat mat. I've also seen people literally hook up like a tube and a heater and like this whole system. I don't know a lot about that, so I'm not going to give you advice. I don't want to start your house on fire, that's something that I would do some outside research for if you think it's necessary after you've put together your first rendition of your greenhouse. Something else that's optional but highly, highly, highly recommend is a humidity / temperature gauge reader. I don't know what they're technically called. I think that having one of those will help you figure out if your cabinet's working as you intend it to. Another thing that I've seen other people use is adding some kind of like weather sealing tape around the edges of your cabinet. For me, my humidity stays up at like 90% without that, so I haven't found it necessary, but I know some people do, and I think especially if you're relying on like latent humidity or pebble trays, that might be a necessary thing for you to do. And the last optional consideration would be any like unique or alternative shelving options to put in your cabinet. I replaced mine with a grid panel and then little wire shelves on the back wall. I know some people use Rubbermaid like wire shelving units to replace the glass shelves. The coolest option is you can get these acrylic panels made to look exactly like the glass shelves, but they have slots in them for increased airflow. And I think that's a brilliant option. They look so pretty. It's a little expensive for my taste, but if you're really big on the aesthetics of it and you aren't too concerned about dropping an extra, $50 to $100 on your cabinet, then I would very much recommend those because I do think that that is the most aesthetically appealing option. So now's the fun part. I'm gonna show you my greenhouse cabinet in detail and talk about some of the components inside of it. Okay, you can see that I have 2 grow lights up there. I only use one, but I do have that second one just in case. There's the hole that we drilled in the back of the cabinet where the wires run out of, and I do have an outlet right behind this cabinet, so they connect to that. Here is my humidifier. It's 500 milliliters and it spurts out humidity every 3 to 5 seconds, and I really like this one. It's a USB connected one, and so I do have a power adapter behind here, but yeah, that works out super well for me and I like it. Here is the fan that I bought. I have this one pointing directly upwards and it keeps all the humidity from condensing and like pooling up in the bottom. You can see as the humidifier goes, it like swirls like a little tornado. And I like that a lot. It's been super helpful and I haven't had any condensation issues since I put the fan in here. You can see the grid board I have, as well as those little wire hook baskets. I love it. It helps spread the plants out a little bit, and it's pretty sturdy. I just have these little metal magnetic hooks that hold it up. I've seen some people use zip ties and other things, but the magnetic hooks work for me. And then you can see in this top corner, I have my humidity meter. It was much higher before I started filming. I've had this cabinet open for like 20 minutes now, but the humidity now, it shows it's at 78%, and then it also reads the temp. So I find this very helpful in just monitoring the cabinet and making sure everything's operating as it's supposed to. So that was my greenhouse cabinet. I'm really proud of her, and I do have everything linked in the bio, like I said earlier. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram. That's all I've got for you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out the links in the bio if you want to build your own cabinet. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed watching, and I will see you around.